Welcome to Shooting Straight with A1F.com. I'm Frank Miniter, the editor-in-chief of the R-Ariz, America's First Freedom. Today we have the honor to speak with Congresswoman Debbie Lesko from the great state of Arizona. Congresswoman, I'd like to begin here. I'm curious. Here you are in the halls of Congress. I think you're in your third term, if I'm correct?
Yes.
The Senate is split 50-50, with Kamala Harris poised to break any 50-50 ties. And the House is split by 6 votes between the Democrats and Republicans. So it's razor thin through Congress. Yet this administration and this Congress, the House anyway, have been willing to go after a fundamental right, the Second Amendment of our U.S. Bill of Rights. What is that like in the halls? I don't imagine you having too many water cooler conversations with the opposing party, but I know there are a lot of events where you do meet them.
Well, yeah, I do try to work with my Democratic colleagues on issues that we can agree on. Unfortunately, the vast majority, if not all of the Democrats in the U.S. House of Representatives believe that we need to control guns more, and I don't believe in it, and so I'm here fighting the good fight and trying to protect our Second Amendment constitutional rights. And it doesn't matter who's in office. We need to stand up and unite, and all of your listeners need to try to educate their friends and their neighbors on how it's so important to stand up for our constitutional rights. Years ago, I was afraid of guns, so I can relate to people that are afraid of guns and think that they are the things that lead to violence. But I was brought to my senses, I guess you say, at a Republican meeting where there was a pro-gun rights advocate debating a pro-gun control advocate. And it really came down to something very simple, that people that follow the laws will obey the gun laws, and criminals that go around shooting people and killing people are not going to follow gun laws. And that's about how simple it is. And I don't know why I didn't think of that when I was afraid of guns, but it clicked. It clicked. And so it's something simple like that. We need to tell our friends and our neighbors who are irrationally afraid of guns that guns are not the enemy. It's the people that have ill intent that we need to control. So we need to enforce our laws that are already on the books. And we need to make sure that people get mental illness help, quite frankly, because all of these gun control laws, they're not going to stop gun violence. They're not going to stop any violence. And so that is the message I want your listeners to know, is that talk to your neighbors and try to be rational with them, and you'll convince them. You'll convince them that we need to protect our Second Amendment rights.
But if I were a politician right now who was opposed to our right to keep and bear arms, I'd be a little nervous with all the new gun owners, 8 million last year, many of which are women, many are suburbanites. It's a changing demographic. It's a big demographic, over 100 million gun owners in the United States. You'd think that pressure that Al Gore felt when he lost his own home state up till today would be moderating some of these politicians. But unfortunately, we see bills like H.R. 8, which I know you've come out against, being passed by the House.
Yeah, the Democrats are very radical right now, and it's totally opposite of what President Biden promised to the American people when he was candidate, President Biden. I mean, he would say that, he was for more gun control, but he also came across as this more moderate guy who wanted to work with Republicans on things. Well, that is not the case at all. On every issue, including gun control issues, they have gotten very radical. Because there's more Democrats elected in the U.S. House of Representatives than Republicans, they control the agenda here. Speaker Pelosi controls the agenda. And so Chairman Nadler of the Judiciary Committee is pushing all kinds of gun control bills, and they pass. They pass out of the U.S. House of Representatives because all the Democrats vote for them, and they outnumber the Republicans. But that's why elections matter. And so in the U.S. House of Representatives, it's very close right now. And so in 2022, we need to make sure that we support candidates that support the Second Amendment, because we can flip the House to Republican control. And so all these radical gun grabbing control bills will be stopped in its tracks. And that's what people need to understand. I think there's a lot of people out there that, they don't know politics. They don't know how it works. They just vote for the person that is the most friendly or that they seem to like, that smiles the most. But it's real important to learn where the candidates stand on key issues that are important to you. And quite frankly, I'm a Republican. Republicans support gun rights. They support the Second Amendment. So I vote straight Republican ticket myself because I know that they'll stand up for gun rights. And here in Congress, it's all about the math. If there's more Democrats elected, even if you like that Democrat on another issue, but they're for more gun grabbing control, bills, they're going to help Pelosi stay in power. And they're going to set the agenda. So that's why I vote straight Republican.
Right. We need a Congress that respects our freedom. And not that long ago, quite a few Democrats did. And I would hope there's still a couple in the House that do. It seems when Colin Peterson lost his seat, he was the last very adamantly loud pro-gun Democrat in the House. So here we are in this weird divide right now. And it's strange to me that the Democrats in power now don't see this issue as the big American issue it really is. I'm wondering if you ever have a chance to take some of those Democrats out to the gun range, maybe somewhere near D.C. or in your home state.
I have in the past, quite frankly. I was in the Arizona state legislature, and I actually invited Democrat and Republican women out to the gun range in Arizona, to Arizona Shooters World. And some of them had never shot a gun before in their life. They were petrified, both on the Republican side and the Democrat side. And they both had fun. We had fun together. We went out to lunch together. We went to the shooting range. I still have a picture. We were standing in front of a whole bunch of guns for sale on the wall at Shooters World, and we had a blast. And that's what I think it takes. It takes rational talk to convince people not to be afraid of guns, that guns themselves are not the enemy, and that if you change a law to control things, only law-abiding citizens are going to follow the law. The people that want to go in and shoot people up or commit a crime, they're going to do it anyway, no matter what the law is. I mean, if they're willing to kill somebody, which definitely violates the law, they're not going to listen to legislation that says you can't carry a gun into a restaurant. I mean, come on. If they're willing to kill somebody, they're not going to follow that, that gun control law. So it makes no sense to control law-abiding citizens. But it's hard to convince my Democratic colleagues of that. But I think it takes the common people. I mean, I'm a common person. Everybody to speak up and reach out to their congressional representative and tell them what they think, because it's the people that vote for these people to be in. And so it's the people that have to vote for people that protect Second Amendment rights. Elections matter. You saw this in the last election. That's why all this radical stuff is going on, and we need to change it back.
Right. This is the women's right as much as anything else. It empowers women who may be a single mom, may be home alone. If someone comes to the door who's larger than them, who's dangerous, it's an equalizer until the police can arrive.
Yes. There are so many women that are buying guns now because they know that they need to protect themselves. And with the Democrats wanting to defund police, and this whole radical agenda of defunding the police, letting prisoners out of prison, and combine that with now they want to take away our gun rights and our guns. This is a recipe for disaster. And so, as you said, women like myself and other women, more and more of us are going to the gun range. We're buying guns. We're educating ourselves. We're practicing shooting and how to defend ourselves. Because with this radical agenda and all these protests going on, I mean, ultimately, we have to protect ourselves. And that's a Second Amendment right to defend ourselves.
Right. Back to H.R. 8, this so-called universal background check bill. You tweeted that the Democrats aren't even hiding their radical gun control agenda. They're attacking the Second Amendment and want to take away law-abiding citizens' ability to protect themselves while not doing anything to actually solve mass gun violence. I just think that gets right to it. They want to control people, not actually solve the problem. Is that what you were getting to there?
Yeah, that's right. And it's more of a government control of what my Democratic colleagues believe. Now, some of them, I think it's a strategy to take away our guns. Other of my Democratic colleagues, I think they really believe that these gun control bills are going to help, stop gun violence or violence in general. And they don't. I mean, you can see that all the time when you have cities that have all these gun control bills and very limited rights. They have mass shootings, So these laws to control law-abiding citizens aren't going to help if somebody's crazy. And somebody's crazy and wants to take out a bunch of people. It's not going to help. I mean, you saw that there are people that kill people with knives. They kill people in other ways. So that's the message we need to get across to rational people, have a rational conversation. And I would encourage all of your listeners to rationally reach out to their friends and neighbors and tell them why gun rights are so important and not condemn them if they think the other way right off the bat. Because I can tell you, I'm a personal example. I wasn't raised with guns. My family didn't have guns. So I had this irrational fear of guns. It didn't make any sense, but it's what I believed at the time. And so it took somebody that was just a rational person saying, listen, you pass all these gun bills, gun control bills, all it's doing is taking away the rights of the law-abiding citizens. And it was very simple. It's a very simple message. But for whatever reason, it didn't click with me at the time. And it just changed me. I mean, one person talking changed the way that I believed. And after that, I mean, I was afraid to first pick up a gun to go to the shooting range. I wasn't raised with it, so I didn't know about it. But I went shooting. I learned how to handle a gun. I learned how to load a gun. And so now I'm not afraid anymore. And I understand why it's so important to protect our constitutional rights and that guns are not the enemy. It's people that have mental illness, that have ill intent, that are the enemy.
Right. I was at the range the other day, and a friend had a Kimber 1911, and it was a nice looking pistol, and I wanted to check it out and shoot it too. And he said, sure, great. And I thought to myself, wait a second, in a universal background check law, it would be a felony potentially for him to hand me that gun just to shoot on the range. And suddenly we'd both be felons unless we ran to a gun store and did a whole transfer and then transfer it back and paid all these fees and went through all this process. They're turning law-abiding people potentially with these kinds of laws into felons, into criminals.
Yes, you're exactly right. And one of the examples I gave when I spoke out against H.R. 8 is that I'm a survivor of domestic violence. And women that are survivors of domestic violence, they may need to protect themselves against the ex-abuser. And it's important for us to have the right to defend ourselves. I mean, most times we may be overpowered by the strength of a man. And so it's very important. And let's take the example of a woman who is in fear for her life, but she doesn't own a gun, but a friend of hers owns a gun. Under H.R. 8, that friend wouldn't be able to lend a gun to the woman because she would become a criminal. Let's give another example of someone who has suicidal thoughts and they own a gun. And they ask their neighbor or their friend, they say, listen, I'm not in a good place right now. Would you take my gun? Again, H.R. 8 would prevent that. It would make that person who's taken the gun and the person giving it to him a felon. I mean, this is just wrong. And also think about H.R. 8. How in the world would you enforce that? the only way to enforce that is if you had a national gun registry. And we don't want that. I don't want the government knowing everything about me and every gun that I have and what I do with every gun. It just leads to these, gun grabbing people tracking us and trying to intimidate us. So I am so thankful for the NRA and for all the work that you do. It's very important. I am a lifetime NRA member, and I want to thank you for everything that you do to protect our Second Amendment rights and the right to defend ourselves.
Well, that's a good transition, because I also wanted to ask you about a tweet. You stood up for the NRA not that long ago when the Democratic AG of New York, Letitia James, she moved against the NRA with a lawsuit and actually said she wants to disband the NRA, one of the oldest civil liberties associations in this nation. You tweeted, the Democratic New York AG is filing an outrageous lawsuit against the NRA. This is an assault on the Second Amendment and the U.S. Constitution.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that there's Democrats out there like that AG that are trying to take out a whole organization. And it's the radical left that is going after our gun rights, and they will do anything. I think that's corrupt. I think it's corrupt to go after the NRA, but that doesn't stop them. We saw what happened in the impeachment of President Trump. I was on Judiciary Committee, and I saw that there's bad actors out there. And so I'm just really thankful for the NRA. I mean, it's made up of everyday people that believe in the Constitution and believe in the right to defend ourselves. And so I'm thankful that you're working so hard. And the NRA is a great organization. That's why I'm a lifetime member. And, it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. We need to stand up for the values that have made this nation great and our constitutional rights and freedoms. And one of those is the right to bear arms and defend ourselves.
Right. Now, Arizona, you're a state that unfortunately has two senators who are opposed to our right to keep and bear arms. Do you think they're out of step with your state and your constituency?
Well, I believe that they probably are out of step with most of Arizonans, because most of Arizonans support gun rights and Second Amendment rights. The thing is that your listeners and I have to continue to educate people about elections and how it works. I found that most people do not realize that when there's more Democrats elected to Congress or the U.S. Senate, that the Democrats control the agenda. Most people want to, they go, oh, well, I just want to vote for the person, except they don't know the person. They don't know all the things. They just base their votes on commercials or mailers or, oh, that's a nice person, that they seem nice, or they have a nice name, or whatever the case may be. But elections have consequences. And so I am grateful that the NRA actually sends out a postcard. I get a postcard before the election saying, who are the people that support gun rights? And so I just think that the NRA and us, all of us, need to educate Arizona voters and other voters more about who supports gun rights, who doesn't, and why it's important.
It sounds to me like you're very optimistic as we head toward the midterm election about a possible change in Congress, at least and more of an embrace of our freedom. But what worries me, and I'm wondering if this is touching you, is getting through the mainstream media and tech censorship that's out there, and getting this message out there to people so they understand our freedom and embrace our freedom, especially with all the new gun owners now out there. Are you finding that difficult? Or do you see hope, or where do you see that going?
Oh, I think the U.S. House of Representatives is going to be back in Republican control after the 2022 election. But you're right. I mean, you have all these liberal tech company CEOs filtering what we say, censoring what we say, cutting us out. They took down Parler. I mean, this is an uphill battle. You got banks that won't, operate with merchants who sell guns or ammo. I mean, this is all out, cultural, political warfare. And we have to fight back. And so if any of your listeners out there have the knowledge and money to set up conservative social media sites, they would make a fortune. Can you think of it as 74 million people would be on their social media sites? And I think there's some that are already doing this. And it's so smart because there's just people like me and you and other conservatives that want an alternative where they're not going to be censored.
Right. The First Amendment is the way forward, but we have to break through that, right, the din that's out there from mainstream media and the mischaracterizations of our rights that they do. And you've done that on the floor of Congress, and you've done that, I've seen you on Fox News and many other places. And thank you, Congresswoman. Where can people find out more about you?
Well, thank you very much. I have a House website called Lesko, Lesko, .house.gov, and I have a weekly newsletter that I send out that just kind of briefly tells you what I'm up to here in Washington, D.C., what bills the Democrats are pushing. And it's a really good source because you're not going to get the facts from the mainstream media, I'll tell you that. And so I would encourage everyone to sign up at lesko.house.gov. Of course, I also have Twitter, I have Facebook, I have Instagram. We were on Parler. I think we're going to try to get back up on Parler again. And so I think I'm on all of them, if not close to all of them. And you can find all of those taglines at lesko.house.gov.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Thank you.